All right, welcome back. This is CSIS 2200, Systems Analysis and Design. We're looking at the MIS book here, Chapter 8. We're going to be talking about e-commerce, or what is sometimes referred to as electronic commerce. For this course, will be referred to as e-commerce. Some of the learning objectives we're going to go through in this chapter will be pretty much to define what is e-commerce, how to describe it, what are some pros and cons to e-commerce, some of the major categories of e-commerce, different models, business to consumer, business to business. Look at some new technology, emerging technologies in this area for mobile-based and voice-based e-commerce, for supporting technologies that help e-commerce that are out there that you guys can take advantage of. Social commerce and the reasons for its popularity. Why are people using it? Explain hyper-social organizations and their growth, their popularity that's going on. Social media also plays a large role in e-commerce these days, so we'll look at that as well. All right, so if I asked the average student what is e-commerce, you probably have a pretty good idea of how to define it. So e-commerce, or sometimes it's referred to as e-business, when students graduate and they're out in the workforce, they're probably going to be working in an office environment, working with some kind of managing information system, and that system is probably going to be somehow tied together to their e-business. So how does your managing information system that you're going to be working on, how does it fall into the e-business model? E-business really is, I guess you're going to define it, would be everything that a company does, all its activities that perform either if they're buying and selling something, a product, or a service. Now, even if you translate that to even Douglas College has, in a sense, an e-business, in a sense it's selling its service, which is educational services. And we have a global market now. We have people coming from all over the world to Canada to study in Vancouver, to go to Douglas College and other institutions. And we advertise our information on our e-business or our website, which is how we translate the e-business. E-commerce is slightly different. I think e-commerce is the buying and selling of goods and services over the internet more directly. This is something that we tend to associate with when we think of things like Amazon.com or eBay or Alibaba or other websites that actually sell and goods and services, or primarily goods, over the internet. A lot of companies, they use e-commerce to augment or supplement their traditional commerce. So this could be a brick and mortar type of a place, like a shopping center, a mall, like let's say Roots or Zara's or someone like that, where they have an actual traditional commerce. They sell it in a mall, but they also have an e-commerce option as well. And they've been finding, and the stats is that more and more people every year have been buying more and more online. And so you're finding that a lot of these brick and mortar traditional commerce models are actually starting to wither, and a lot of them are actually closing. And that's actually been accelerated with the COVID in a lot of shopping centers. So when we're talking about e-commerce and we're defining it from a business point of view, we want to look at the business applications that support the e-commerce. And again, the business applications have to support that buying and selling products and services. Now, at Douglas College, we don't actually sell per se a product. We're more like delivering a service where students have to actually come into the college, although we're doing a lot of online right now. But I think that's just a temporary situation. We were not an online institution prior to COVID. We had a very limited amount of online offerings. So the business applications really have to support that. And some of our business applications that had to become very robust, and even more so, is things like Blackboard. Blackboard is a learning management system. This is one of our key business applications. Would be considered a managing information system, but it's geared specifically for education. A lot of systems in these applications can also collaborate with other companies. And when you're dealing with selling a service or product, and the systems that you're going to be using will probably be connected or linked to other institutions, other companies that support yours. For example, I'm in charge of a managing information system for Douglas College that goes through the governance process for vetting curriculum at the college. That means that whenever there's a new course or a course change, it has to go through a very rigorous vetting governance process where people have to check off, sign it, read it, make comments, make changes before this is actually published and delivered to students. Now, that tool that I am in charge of is also affiliated with the college, and we collaborate with that managing information system because the college has to have support for these systems. So there's a big part of the business applications is the support, but it's also other companies that are working with your institution to deliver its products or helping the company sell the products or products and services. These tools all have some kind of communication with other partners. So there's usually a link, a portal, a virtual private network possibly, or an EDI, that electronic data inter-exchange that we talked about in earlier chapters. Some type of communication that you work with to transfer your information from one type of business to the next type of business, which is very important because you need clear communication when you're working with your business partners to make sure that invoices, supplies, order amounts, quantity, delivery dates, all the communication is very, very clear. So these business applications need a very clear communication with their partners. There's not many companies in the world today that do everything, unless it's a small sort of quote unquote mom and pop type of business. Larger companies all rely on other companies. For example, restaurants rely on food delivery services, and then the warehouses for the food, and then the farmers for the. So there's always a multiple series of partners in your business. And when you're working with these business applications, these managing information systems, you need to have that clear communication. Another great aspect to these business applications is the data analytics, the business intelligence that we're talking about so much these days. This is a new area in business that is exploding right now. A lot of companies are looking for business intelligent people to analyze the data. These business applications collect all of the information that they're working with their partners, with their the supply chain, with the different products and the timing, etc. They collect all this data and they look at the business intelligence to help them make better decisions. So whatever managing information system that you're working with, you're collecting data, and that data has to be processed, and that process is really what we're talking about of the business intelligence with our partners that we're communicating with in our to make our company work. A lot of these business applications have a component to provide customer service. Depends on where you are, what kind of company you are, you will have customer service. Now, in an educational environment, of course, we have counseling, we have management, faculty. There's a lot of student services involved. But when you're working with a company, there's probably some kind of contact us, frequently asked questions, providing customer service to help your customers get the information and the support that they need. And a lot of these managing information tools that you work with, especially if you're in customer relationship management or CRM, you're going to be dealing a lot with customer service. Another thing to note here is the suppliers or supplying software updates and patches. Whatever managing information system you're using, this business application that you're using, there's probably going to be ongoing updates. They're always improving, modifying, enhancing these systems. So it's something to be aware of, that when you are working with these systems, are you using the current version? Do you need the new patches? A lot of those patches are for security purposes, or they fixed problems, like even small things like printer drivers, for some simple little example like that, where all of a sudden you were unable to print with certain type of printers. Now you can print, that sort of thing. A lot of these business applications were developed by companies and provide vendor support. So the company that provides the management information system is referred to as the vendor. So we have a company that we work with at Douglas College. It is a partner with Oracle, and then they have taken the Oracle database system and they've created their own product, and that is our vendor that provides one of the key managing information systems at Douglas College to support all of our student records, our course records, our scheduling, and all that data that has to be managed. But we have a vendor that works with Oracle, and I don't want to give you away the name of it, but you could probably look it up. But anyway, Oracle would be a vendor, and Microsoft would be the vendor. Adobe could be a vendor. So who is the company that manufactures the managing information system that you're using? And you should know that. All of these vendors, they publish and they disseminate information usually on their website. If you're in an IT type of role, you'll be very closely connected to these areas where if you are in charge of supporting a product, like I support the our particular managing information system for curriculum development, I'm in close contact with the vendor, and they publish and they disseminate information through emails and through their website on updates, on changes, and that sort of thing. So just being more in tune with who are you communicating with. So whatever system that you guys choose to research and do a presentation on, you're going to want to know, of course, clearly who produced it. For example, if you're in accounting and you're doing QuickBooks, I think QuickBooks is, well, actually, I think it's by QuickBooks. And then there's Sage is another one. SAP would be another one. And Microsoft has their products as well. So my point there is you'll need to know clearly who the publisher is and the vendor so that you can get resources and information from them. All right, let's move on to the next learning objective here called the value chain within and connected to this e-commerce. So the value chain, you might have heard of this as a business concept. And value chain, you can think of this as exactly that. It's adding value in every step of the way of your product or service. Like a chain has links, and every link in the chain creates value. Without that link, the chain would break and you wouldn't have it. So the value chain really is, you need to really understand how at each stage within a series of different activities, you need to be able to add some kind of a value. There's an added cost to that. I'll explain that here in a second. So each of those stages, the series of activities, you could think of these as the primary activities. These are the fundamental primary activities. Now, there's a few of them here that you should be aware of and understand clearly. So the inbound logistics, they call it this. This is what they call inbound logistics. You could think of this as the movement of materials. For example, in the pulp and paper industry, the movement of materials would be cutting trees down or some kind of material that paper is produced from. So the inbound logistics is a primary activity, and that adds value to the end process, which just makes sense. Of course, every product had to come from somewhere, and that product had to evolve through a whole series of primary activities, starting off with inbound logistics, which is that movement of the material. So you cut a tree down, you put it on a barge, and you ship it to a pulp and paper factory. So from there, the next primary activity is the operations. And the operations is taking all that raw material and processing it. So you're going to take all that wood or whatever material it is, you're going to grind it up, you're going to create some kind of a pulp, and you're going to process that raw material. It's the operation portion of the primary activities. Once you've created that product, maybe you're making paper, then you want to ship it out. You want to move it out into the next. So the next primary activity is outbound logistics. So outbound just means that paper is going out of the plant that it was created in. So we're going to move it. We're going to ship it. So you see this, you see a lot of shipping that goes on. I mean, there's shipping that occurs at the inbound logistics. When you see the word logistics, a lot of times we're talking about the movement and what's involved in shipping that particular either raw material or product to the next stage within the chain. And this is what I'm trying to explain here, is that the value chain is each of these are like links in the chain, and each of these adds value. So you can imagine a raw tree has a certain value, but when you crush it up and you make it into a paper product, it becomes more valuable. When you ship it out to a wholesaler, it becomes, again, more valuable. Once the wholesaler has it in their warehouse, they have to sell that. That could be something like Staples now, or Home Office Depot, or whatever they're called, where you want to purchase some paper. That's the next stage in the primary activities, marketing the sales. So how do you get that paper product? Well, there's companies geared specifically to that, whatever that product happened to be. So they have to generate the sales. Big part of the primary activities within the value chain of any e-commerce model. So if you're selling paper through Staples online, you got to remember that you go through that inbound logistics. It has to be processed into paper. It has to be shipped off to the warehouses. The warehouses are marketing it. They're selling it to the customers. And finally, the last primary activity within this chain is service, following up and supporting the customer. So once you've sold the product to the customer, you want to be able to follow up and provide support. Without that link in the chain, you could end up losing customers, or customers could go elsewhere. So each of these are very valuable parts of the chain. If you break any of these, well, the whole system doesn't work. All right, here's a graphic that kind of helps put it all together. This was done by the Michael Potter's value chain. Now, what they're summarizing in here is the primary activities of getting a product to market. So like I said in the earlier slide, we've got that inbound logistics of bringing in raw materials. They're digging it out of the ground. They're cutting trees down. They're fishing, whatever it happens to be. That's the inbound logistics. And then it gets moved over to the operations. As I've explained, we go to the outbound, we market it, and then finally we support it. All of those, every step of the way, adds value to the customer and from what the customer wants. The customer wants to buy something, well, it has to go through that process. Now, on top of each of these main 5 value chain items, these primary items, you've got different things that need to occur. Procurement. So procurement is the acquisition or the acquiring of a particular product. You've got technology development that needs to be involved. So each of these stages have a procurement of some sort. Each one of these has a technology development or requires technology. Each one of these has some kind of human resource management. It needs people, basically humans, to chop the trees down, to build it in, make it into some paper, to drive the truck to the warehouse, to salespeople to sell it. For the service technical people, you need human resource management. And finally, you need a firm infrastructure in place to tie it all together. So each of these links in the chain require all 4 of these main features. So each one of them share that. And that's why the model looks like this. That's why Michael Potter's value chain has this drawn out like that. To produce the ultimate result, which is some type of value to the customer, whatever that happens to be. It could be a product that they value, or it could be a service that they value to get to that end result. So looking now that you get a basic understanding of how this value chain works, but from the start of digging raw materials out of the ground, possibly, to delivering it as an end product to the customer where they can use it, we have to look at how that's being impacted with the internet. Well, we know how, I don't think any of us need to know that the internet has had a tremendous impact on how supply chains work. with companies nowadays. So it's increased dramatically the speed and the accuracy of how the different links within that chain they can communicate, get the right information at the right time between those suppliers that are supplying that raw material to the distributors, to the salespeople, to you as the customer. So the internet has really enhanced this, and as you know, our world is really focusing around the internet, delivering most of our products nowadays through some kind of internet supply chain. This has really changed how companies work. In the past, we've had to rely on these large multinational companies to do this. Well, now that's changed because the internet has provided smaller companies to participate. So that it's reduced the cost, which means a lot of these companies can participate in different parts of this value chain integration. It could maybe you could have a small shipping company that now can take over rather than relying on the larger ones that we did in the past prior to the internet. So e-commerce and the internet really have provided and facilitated this enhancement for the value chain. More players have been able to participate in the value chain, reducing costs to the consumer. So even though each stage adds value, the value that it adds may be highly competitive. Where in the past you might have had one or two big players, now you might have hundreds of smaller players that can compete at a lower price, forcing the market lower, which provides a lower end result value to the customer. And that's what we want. And you probably have noticed this, that the price of some of our consumer goods have been extremely low. Just a small example here would be televisions. Back in the 70s and 80s, televisions were hundreds of dollars. Let's say in today's dollar, an average TV might cost $1,000 back then. Today, a better quality TV, a larger TV, higher resolution TV would be less than half the price of that, because there's so many more players that are involved now, which has really added value, but not as much as it was in the past. So you guys are going to be working with some managing information systems, probably several. These systems will work with your companies. They will probably have some kind of integration with your e-commerce or e-business within your company at some level. So this is going to hopefully, and the end result companies are trying to do with these managing information systems is to reduce the costs of doing business. It wants to reduce how much it's going to cost in that value chain, because the more they can reduce it, the more customers they can attract, and the more competitive they can be. So that's the ultimate goal of managing information systems, this whole course. The ultimate goal, it always comes down to money. It's to reduce the cost of how much it's cost you, in a sense, to make more profit for the company. Now, we've all lived through the era of brick and mortar. So click and brick, I like that one, and brick and mortar. So there's a mixture now, and there's a lot of transition with companies. A lot of companies are going out of business. A lot of them are transitioning over to these e-platforms. If you've ever gone to a mall in the last few years, you probably noticed that there's a lot of shops that are closing down because they cannot compete with the online market. You can buy much cheaper online than you can by going in and going to a store. Now, a lot of people like to go to the store. They like to actually see it. They like to buy it right there. They like to take it home. They like to try it on. So there's a lot of advantages to that brick and mortar. But this click and brick kind of e-commerce model is a hybrid. So, for example, like I mentioned, you could go to something like Roots or Zara's and buy something, or still go to a mall and see those stores, but still purchase it online. A lot of times their online price is the same as their in-store price because they want to protect that. And a lot of brands now, the way that they can compete is there's no one else out there that sells their particular brand. So that's one way that they're protecting it. But if there's a product that spins off that's very similar, people might find that. There's a lot of knockoff type of things that are offered at a much cheaper price. So these companies are really trying to capitalize on the new internet with doing online transactions. A lot of times people can go to the store, and I've done this myself. I've tried on shoes and found the right size that fits me, and then I've gone home and I've actually bought it online. I haven't really saved a whole lot of money, but sometimes I do. So sometimes I want to just think about it before I actually buy it, and then I'll go home and I'll purchase online. The downside, of course, is we have to wait for the shipping to arrive, which could be between 24 hours to 24 days. Depends on where the product is coming from. I think it's really a testament to these stores that are able to maintain their brick and mortar and have the click and brick model as well. So I think what we're going to see in the next, and we're seeing that transition actually occurring right now, is companies that have their own brand and they're still surviving with both. They still have traditional stores, and they also have an online as well. The book goes through a table here of comparing the e-commerce, electronic commerce versus traditional commerce models. They give a couple of examples. I'll go through a couple here. Product information for traditional commerce like newspapers and magazines over the past 10 years have been steadily dropping. People, and including myself, I don't buy newspapers anymore. I don't buy magazines anymore. I look at everything pretty much online now. Catalogs are just not printed anymore. Telephone books just aren't printed anymore. It's just a waste of paper. No one uses them, and they're out of date so rapidly. So the online has so much more advantages. It's faster, it's quicker. So a lot of those traditional things are just disappearing. We're not even seeing these anymore. And right now there's a real transition with the news industry with trying to capture the e-business market. And when you go onto these sites now, they sometimes they ask for $1 to subscribe, or they fill it up with ads. And if you don't want the ads, you've got to pay a monthly subscription fee to read their newspaper. So it's just how things are changing between traditional and e-commerce. I think that's really what this slide and this table is all about, is to try to bring awareness of how much things are actually changing. And also how things are changing in business. So back in the day when we used, regular mail, how slow that used to be, and now how we can get things, in emails, and things happen a lot quicker, or can happen quicker. Although I found right now, now that we're in at the time of this recording with COVID, and we're doing a lot of stuff online with emails, I find that sometimes it's even better to be back in the office in a traditional commerce to get things done rather than this online commerce that we're doing. So it's not always the best. And I think a lot of that has to do with how people are used to the technology. Like, is everybody really comfortable with online technologies and how to use everything? Do they have it? Does it work? Does it support? So there's a lot of barriers in this. But we're in a really interesting transitional time right now between moving over from traditional to an e-commerce model. All right, let's move on to the next topic here. These are pros and cons of e-commerce. Well, if I asked each of you to come up with some pros and cons, I'm sure you guys could, but here's what they come up with in the book. Some of the advantages are it enhances relationships. That's with your business partners. When you've got electronic commerce and you're dealing with emails and online threads, and you can track things a lot easier, everything's logged and archived, you can build a better communication, which can translate into a better relationship. Although I have found myself back in the old days, I really enjoyed just the actual conversation. I worked with a company, consulted with a company in the printing industry for a while, and their salespeople, they talk to each other and they have a personal relationship, and they would golf and they would talk business all the time. And now with this online stuff, they don't do that. It's a more matter of fact. It's more, here are the numbers. So they put that down as an advantage, but there is advantages to the old way of actually having a human connection with your suppliers and your customers. I think even today, I think all of us, we do like to have a personal connection. We don't like to just have an email sent to us with a template to read through to solve some kind of generic problem that we might have. So they've got that down as an advantage. It enhances relationships, and it can, but I think there's also some downsides to that too. That's been my personal experience with this. Creates price transparency, and absolutely, this is a great one. Money is, what drives all of this type of stuff. When you are online, you can compare prices. You can check out other competitors rapidly. So there's a lot of price transparency. So it's unlikely that you're going to get price gouged as easily. And if you do, you're probably going to catch it quite quickly. So that's a huge advantage to e-commerce, is price transparency for sure. Another great option is we have instant access around the world to all of our partners. So if we're having products, raw materials that are brought in from another part of the world, we can do that. I purchase a lot of stuff on Alibaba and AliExpress, which is primarily in Asia, which I don't even worry about this. I just get online and I purchase stuff. And most of the time there's somebody there, which, I mean, they're probably at least probably around 9 hours sometimes, time difference. But, they know that it's a global market now. So that is another huge advantage. In the past, we didn't have that. We were regionally located. Back in the 70s and 80s, we had to, rely on local suppliers. We're very limited on what we could do, but now that's completely changed. Again, another huge advantage is that all this stuff is done electronically, which is data. Once you've got all that data, you can start to analyze it. The business intelligence of your customers is huge. You've probably heard that all these companies are collecting your data, and they're collecting your data because they want more information on you so that they can better track and advertise to you. So whenever I go to one of these online newspapers and they're putting out ads, it's always things that I've usually searched on Alibaba or AliExpress or on Amazon or something like that, and they're putting more things in my eyes, in my sense of view. And I said, hey, that looks pretty neat. I get distracted sometimes because it's creepy. They almost know what I'm looking for, which, is that a good thing or a bad thing? We could have a discussion on this. Should companies, employers, companies collect our data and push those ads to us? Some people don't like the idea that they're collecting anything on us, but they're doing this because they're trying to make money, and they're making money by putting stuff in front of you that you want. So there is a pro to that, but a lot of people see that actually could be a potential disadvantage. So even though it shows you as an advantage here, in my personal opinion, I think you could almost take this as there is another side to this. There is a definite advantage, but there is a con to that as well. Another nice thing that e-commerce has done is the interaction. Because communication is so easy now, we can have online chats. A lot of times they have these chat bots, or they have people that are actually communicating with you, that you can participate with surveys. You can give them thumbs up. You can give them star ratings. You can put down This is a huge thing for online commerce, is customer involvement. I'm sure that most of you have rated either a restaurant or a product. I do this all the time. I'm kind of getting tired of it. I bought so much stuff now. I got all these things I got to respond to. Did you give it 5 stars? You give it 3 stars, whatever. Did you have a problem? Your customers now are involved in the e-commerce process, which helps build more legitimacy to the overall supply chain, to the overall experience that you're going to have, your online purchasing experience for sure. Now, they put down improves customer service as an advantage. Now, I guess idealistically, yes, it does, because we can just get online and talk to them. I had a problem with a product I purchased, and I was able to get online, and they weren't really that friendly at first with me. So what I did was I did the customer involvement. I produced a short video on their product, And I told in a very nice way that the product had malfunctioned and it was poorly made, and I put it up on YouTube. And the company wasn't responding to me until I actually did that. When I did that, the customer said, please take that down. We will send you a brand new fixed device that I had ordered at no cost. So I did that. I took it down because my customer involvement I had a lot of power there, and they sent me a brand new one. And it was a very expensive item. So I was upset because it was an expensive item and it was broken, and they weren't responding to me. Now that's not the case. I think that's not the norm. I think that's the exception to the rule. Most companies now, they understand that customer service is make or break their company. If they get bad star ratings, how many of you listening to this video right now would actually go and buy a product that had a 1 rating? You're probably not going to do it, or you're going to look at it real carefully, and you're probably going to say, well, because it's so cheap, maybe I'll risk it. But if I read the rating. Sometimes people will just rate it bad because they're just angry. Or I read a mattress review. They said, oh, this bed is too soft. But right in the description it said, this is a soft mattress. So, as a consumer, as a customer, you really have to be a little more wise about this, because you're doing most of the research yourself rather than going and getting a salesperson's view. Anyway, I've carried this one on a little too long, so I'm going to stop it here, and I will pick it up in the next video.